So, today's session is mainly on comments. How do we write comments, or where do we write comments, and so on. And if you look at, um, I'll share my screen. So, the thing is like the reason why we write comments on the first place is that to let other authors know that what we are doing something which might not be understood. So, for example, you have so I have this particular piece of code, and it talks about like what this particular method is doing. It says uploads a file in single request, um, and then similarly there will be something else saying upload the file in chunks using multiple requests, and so on. So what these comments are written with good intention, so that if like one it for myself. So for example, if I've written this particular comment, so after 6 months when I see this particular piece of code, I will know what this is doing from the comment itself. But what like yeah, Robert C. Martin, who wrote Clean Code, he says that that is not a good practice to do. And then he has suggested some of the reasons around it. So uh, I think we'll go through some of those reasons. And yeah, it's this is a little bit tricky thing, because you never know what how much comments to write and how much comment not to write. So it's a little bit tricky, but we'll just go through some of the um, suggestions that he has made, and then we can kind of decide whether you want to how many comments you want to do. So yeah, I'll go through. So Naveen, I've just opened your email. I have not shared that one, but I will just talk about it. So the first
Mhm.
one that he talks about is comments cannot compensate for bad code. So generally, what happens is uh, you write these comments basically to you are in a hurry, and you write something very quickly, and then what, you put out a comment saying I'll fix it later. I'll do there will be a to do or something, or which will say that what, we'll do it later, or we'll just say this does this, but later somebody will come and fix it, kind of thing. But if you do that kind of a thing, nobody comes back and fixes it. So for example, if this comment was written, now it's there in this particular repository, and nobody is going to come and change it. They'll just go and read it, but there's nobody going to change it. So it will always remain in that code. So once he gives an example of a rundown street where nobody is living, and the street, because nobody is living, it's deserted place, nobody goes there, and except nobody there, but it still remains in a uh, decent shape. It doesn't go bad. But what happens is, like, one day there's one guy comes in and he just throws a stone on one of the windows, and that window is broken. Now, the moment that window is broken, it kind of signals to everybody else, what, this is a place where we can do wrong things and get away from here. And then what happens is, suddenly within a couple of months, that particular whole neighborhood goes becomes a it becomes a place where nobody wants to go, except for the criminal activities and so on and so forth. So it's similar to what happens with the code. You try to keep it as clean as possible, but at some point of time, you kind of write a comment, and then what happens is, nobody and then they find, okay, what, there's some bad code in that code, and which means you can write some bad code, and then that kind of gives the freedom for other developers. What, that code is written in that particular, it's not that good, I can also get away with writing a little bit of a bad code. And then that thing multiplies, and that's where uh, the problem starts happening. So Yeah, so I think that's one of the biggest arguments, saying that you try to ensure that you write good code so that you don't have to comment it. Now, the question comes out to be, how do you know whether the code that you have written is good? I think that's what Naveen was alluding to, saying how, if you are an average developer, how do you know whether you have written a good code or it's expressive enough, so that other people doesn't don't need the comments on. So that's the other question around it. Uh, any thoughts around it, Kathleen, Naveen?
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, how to know that we are written? Obviously, I think the whole point of the book is to know that you're written clean code,
Yeah,
uh, um, so that so that the comments, so that comments are not needed. And if even if you have to do, then we do it thoughtfully. Actually,
yeah.
that can mind. Is there a, I don't know, like a, you can parser or a program, something where you can put the code through on an index of 1 to 10, it will tell you how clean the code is. I was wondering if there's any parser or anything like that that may make it.
Right. Yeah, it's so we have things called yeah, this thing called Sonar Lint. It actually goes and validates if there are any code smells in it. So
Testing, it is meant for testing and coverage. Okay, it looks at clean code level as
no,
well.
no,
Okay.
yeah, it looks at all the. For example,
Okay.
I go to a model here. So here, if it pull out here or somewhere, I think it will pull out. So
Interesting.
it will
Okay. So
it will kind of I know this is a little bit cleaner version. Um, Let me open one more repository where there may be some issues. Uh, yeah, this will take a while to start on my machine. But yeah, this tool, this is a plugin in IntelliJ. If you install it, it will tell you all the code smells. So you will find you can kind of fix a lot of issues on the fly with this particular thing. So this is just scanning files to index. I have not opened this in like maybe ages, so it will take some time to come with output. Uh,
For me,
okay.
I noticed that when the naming convention is good and the chunks of code are very small, I can understand the code a lot easier.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's that point, that if it is smaller, lesser code, then you kind of know what's happening. Um, but so like if you look at this organization, right? There's config here. There's something called controller. All the exceptions are here, and there's a thing called job, which means there's some job running. So, and then you have a model, which means it will be all related to the models that are present within that repository. Um, and then there is a service where this is a little bit related to Spring Boot, saying that within the service is where your business logic lies. So as a developer, you know that all the business logic will be here. So you know where to look at. So by having this kind of an organization, it's partly driven from a Spring Boot perspective and partly from the yeah. So that's by having this particular code organization, you will know where things are. You are not kind of lost in terms of searching it, and then you know which one where to look at. So that's other thing. Yeah, this is installing things, so it will take some time. Yeah. So, but anyways, I'll see if I can took another one as well. Login API. I think test. See this one is yeah. So that's the point, and other aspect that I'll come is that if you write a code which tells you what's happening, this is a massive code that I've opened. It will take ages to come. But if you write certain pieces of command, like I'll give an example. You have this file transfer service. Is it, I mean, file, yeah. So if I write a comment saying accept file transfer request, that's it. So what is happening is you have written a comment and then you are also having the method name as same thing. So what you're doing is you are actually duplicating code. So the comment and this method both are uh, telling you the same thing. So you're actually duplicating it. So you actually don't need it, this particular piece of comment, and that's why it's not there. But sometimes people do that kind of an update. So for example, this is an update file sequence. So they'll say the next step is update file sequence. Now if somebody writes that kind of code, I mean, this is it it distracts when you're reading the code. It kind of distracts you from understanding, what update file sequence, and then you say, oh, this it is still updating file sequence, why this comment is coming out in the place. So that is why we try to avoid that kind of a comment saying that we don't want that thing. The code should tell you what's happening around it. So that's where the term is like how expressive the code is. Yeah, any thoughts?
Yeah, makes sense. I guess here, yeah, the names are quite expressive. I think the function names, so that helps.
Yeah, and the point here is like obviously you made that when if somebody is not that good as a developer and then they do write that kind of a code, what you will do typically is that you just kind of fix it. So you kind of write a code which uh, are you able to see my this another repository, Dropbox services?
Dropbox
Or
services, no.
no, right?
I mean, it's the file transfer service, yeah.
Okay, you are seeing this file transfer service, is it? Let me share the whole screen. It's just easier. Yeah. So yeah, this is a piece of code that is definitely not good. uh, this is yeah, this is my own piece of code, and joined somebody else joined it. No. Okay. Yeah, so this is written in a different framework. It's not written in Spring. It is written in Play framework. So yeah, you can see that you have this comments, and this is a statement, and which is then commented out. And then this is exactly an example of what bad code looks like. So you write an initialize copy object, and that's what it's doing in new copy file. Like you don't need to write that kind of a thing. Similarly, you have initialized email services. You don't need that. So those are all extra things that has been written there. And yeah, and then see you have this comment saying check if max retry count is reached or not. Now I could tell that okay, if this is the max retry count, so I can refactor it. So I don't need this comment. So if I do this convert into a constant, so I converted this into a constant. So now if anybody reads it, retry count is greater than or equal to max retry count, then I don't need this particular comment. So I can delete this comment out. So that will tell me that that's what it's checking. And then what other thing that you can see is that you have I put a logger statement out there saying that maximum retry. So that's another way to do it. Like if you think you want to explain something, one of the things that you can do is you can kind of put logs, and this is not in the book. You can put its log statements into the code. So what that does is it achieves two things. One thing is you don't have to write that comment. The second thing is the log statement obviously captures what's happening there. And the third thing is when you're debugging in the logs, you can see at what stage you are in. So that log also will tell you what's happening right now. So it's a like adding that log statement kind of serves three purposes there. One, you don't need the comment, which is very good. Second, when you're reading the code you understand, and third, when you're debugging, like when you're trying to fix a problem in production, you can see this statement and it will kind of tell you what's happening there. And the last bit that is going to happen is like suppose somebody has changed this logic, because if this logic has changed, they are going to fix this particular log statement as well. But if you had kept a comment there like earlier, what would have happened is they might just they would leave this comment out. They'll just keep this comment, but they will fix this thing. So what that does is like it creates a, and that is the bigger problem that we have. Like the logic within that particular code might change, but people will not go and update this particular comment. They will only go and update all the logic there. And then what that does is that you read this thing and you troubleshoot it. They're two different things, and then you spend a lot of time figuring it out, and then finally realize this comment is invalid. And then that's another place where it creates a lot of confusion to people. But yeah, did that make sense?
Yeah. Actually, one question I had is kind of indirectly related. I'll tell you with my learning style or how I go through, I need to have a sense of what's the big picture, or let's say in this case a mind map of the code. I see a lot of folks actually they're able to go line by line, but I get very lost very quickly.
Yeah.
I was wondering how do folks who like to look at a mind map style and then drill down on there, how do they approach there? For example, I can tell like some of the folks that I work with, they would write all the functions, classes, and then write the main class at the end. For me, that's a very different way of doing it. I have to write the whole main thing first, what are the functions, and then make each part of the main or the functions of the main happen. Let's say in this case,
Yeah,
I
well.
want to continue the service repository, all of those are there. Sometimes
Yeah.
I struggle with because even if this code was there line by line, and the reason why I'm saying that, just to tie it back to this, even if I had to go line by line in the comment part, one still could get lost because the comment is still at that level of those 2-3 lines per se.
Yeah.
Okay, but how are they able to have a mind map, and how are all these coming together? How do they?
Yeah. So I think that depends on how you think from a developer perspective, right? So if I
Mhm.
compare with writing, right? Like when you're writing, so I do write blogs. So when and there are people who write. So there are authors, right, who write novels. So they
Yeah.
also have two types of authors there. There's one
Yeah.
set of author who does entire plotting
Yeah.
on a whatever system they
There are
have. They do.
schema schematic that they have.
Yeah,
Others is
yeah, yeah,
freestyle.
and then they write it like an end-to-end thing. But there are folks who does not know what the end will look like, but then they kind of figure it out as they go.
Yeah.
So it's similar in
Mm.
development. Like there are people who can write classes straight out of the box. I mean, they just use the entire thing, and then there are people who kind of move it, like they kind of figure it out as they go. I mean, both approaches works.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're comfortable with this particular approach, you go with that approach. And as you said, you can go and write as many comments you want. And then
Mm.
what you do is like that's like your first draft. And
Mm.
then the second draft is where you kind of go and clean it up, saying, I will
Yeah.
create methods and so on. And then you kind of validate yourself whether this particular comment is required or not.
Good point. Yeah.
And
So I write comments for myself, but then I clean up
yeah.
the
So you can
of
clean it
the.
up once. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then obviously, if with quite a bit of experience, what happens is like once you have that chunk of experience, you'll
Yeah.
automatically start thinking about the classes like out of the box. You don't need to write the entire thing.
Yeah.
You can just map the high level classes and everything, and you create those classes and keep, and
Yeah.
then you write the exact logic there. But then there will be a second phase again in that particular thing as well, that you will try to again fix some of the things, make it cleaner and so on. So there
True.
is still two-step process. But the thing is, because you have a bit more experience and maturity, you kind of know that these things will go into this class and this will go into this class. So you already have that organization in your mind.
Yeah.
But that comes with your maturity. But like when you start, it's just whatever feels comfortable is what I would suggest. Just do that,
Okay.
but then go iterate 2 or 3 times, like,
Yeah.
and then you can smoothen things out. So and that's the best way to do it, because what happens is at least you have written the code.
Mhm.
Otherwise, in trying to organize everything, you just remain stuck in your mind.
Okay. Over organizing is also a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. So then it's better you just put it out, because at least people can see that your output, and then obviously you can improve from there. But if you don't have anything, how can you improve?
True.
So
True.
that's another point. Yeah. So that
True.
uh,
Easy.
and yeah, I think that's on that. And then I just yeah. And then this third one is what is very useful. Is like use comments for why, not how. So the why is important. Like if you look at this, like check if patient object is written null. So that's like it's just telling me what this particular is doing. But instead, if I return that it should not be, if it is null, it cannot be null because certain reason, then I will know why this particular check has been added. So it's always useful. Like the minimal comment that like most of the seasoned developers make is they explain the why in the code. Let me see if I can find something good enough. Because that is a thing that I think this one, right, where I've added there are a few comments there. Uh, so this is like a Dropbox API. So the Dropbox extends provides us API. So if I don't write this comment in, I will not know why the entire thing has been written, or how this thing is structured, because it says that chunk uploader 3 phases, it's called a start, append, and finish. And then that's what it's doing. It initiates and then append until finish, and then it finishes. So if I don't write this kind of a statement, I will not know why I'm doing all these things. Why cannot I just simply upload? But that is what that the Dropbox API what they have shared. That's it is designed in that way, and somewhere I need to capture the documentation. So that's the reason why I added it. So yeah. So and if suppose if the API changes, obviously you will have to change the logic and all. But yeah, the API they will not change that API logic like that, just like that, because it would affect a lot of things. So yeah, that's one of the things that you kind of add certain wise. But if you look at any of the other thing, you won't find much comments out there. They will all be uh, there's a Dropbox service, like CSV service. Yeah, there's nothing. There's one here, write the header and write the beans. You can avoid that, but apart from that, you wouldn't have many comments in that particular code, because yeah, it's not necessary. You can just read it and you can understand it. So only if there are some certain there's a business logic that comes in, saying that for this particular scenario we need to do this, which is like not intuitive, then you explain it why you are doing it like that, and that kind of helps people when they are trying to understand the code, because the question, they can read the code, they can understand what's happening, but they will not know the why. That why is something that we don't capture in the code. Yeah, did that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'll go to the next one. Yeah, keep comments relevant and updated. Yeah, that's you need to kind of uh, keep it relevant. If you are changing something, you need to update it. Uh, yeah, you should. Yeah, if you are updating the logic, you need to go and update the comment, and that's actually a duplication of work. That's why we try to avoid comment. But if it is comments are there and you're changing something, then you kind of update it or you kind of remove it. I know there was a stored procedure that was written that was written. Uh, I think it was written 12 years back or something. It's a very old stored procedure. I was working for a logistics company, and the thing is, like, whenever somebody did a change, they used to log an entry into that. Say I made this change on this particular date and so on.
Okay.
Yeah. So it and I mean I was worked on it like after 10 years after somebody had written it. So there were like 100, or there was a big boilerplate in the front, and there was that everybody were going and updating. Yeah, but if you look at if you know source control, if you're using Git, you don't need to do that. Like in Git, it will tell you who did it, at what time did it, and all those things.
Yeah.
So you really don't need to do that. So that's why you kind of avoid yeah, those kind of comments. So that's why it says, yeah, incorrect comments or outdated comments are it's worse than no comments. Similarly, avoid commented out code. Yeah, you want to keep it clean. So what you don't want comments in the like this one I said, right? It is initially this particular statement is there, but it's not used. It's commented out. So instead of keeping it, you just delete it. There's no point in keeping that particular piece of code.
But sometimes when solving problems or like that, sometimes you want to keep that code, right? You may want to come back to it later or want to
Yeah,
change.
yeah. So
Uh,
that so you have this Git, right? So you can kind of go back to a commit and find it out.
mhm.
So,
Mhm.
but generally, yeah, you don't need. See, it's not required. Then you kind of delete it out. It's just not.
Enterprise level, yeah.
It just creates that much additional confusion in the code. So that's why you don't. You try not to do it. Uh, it just creates the unnecessary clutter. And you can always retrieve from version history. So that's again another thing. And the next one is to do. To do is like I don't know if I have got to do. There will be some to do. There's one to do. The problem with to do is like there are a lot of them. Yeah. The problem with to do is that to do are something you write. There's something else. Yeah, to do put a check if the file with patient name is already uploaded. And what happens is I have put this to do, and then that remains in to do like for ages. Nobody comes and fixes that. And why the people write this to do is like they just put a reminder for themselves in future that they are going to go and update it. And the reason why they don't want to do it now is because obviously time pressure and so on and so forth. So they just put a to do, what, I'll come back to this and do it, but nobody comes back to it. They just it just that to do just remains there like for ages until somebody comes in, what, I will clean this up and so on. So, but by that time the person who had written the initial to do would have kind of left the organization already, and then you don't know why he had written that to do, because now the code is working in production, there's no issue in that, then why we have to do this? So yeah, so just, I mean, what uh this is mainly done for you can use it, this is a useful thing. What you can do is like when you are writing a new code, a new piece of code, you want to get to the end, or you want to see the output very quickly. So at that point of time, for some few other things, you just you can kind of put a to do markers for yourself, and then you go to the end, you finish the coding, and then you can come and clean this up as a second part of it. If you do that way, it's still okay. So it remains in your branch, it does not get merged to the main branch. And then yeah, and then you go and clean it up in your feature branch, and then whenever you're merging it, there are no to dos in it. So that way, you can like this. You can see that IntelliJ has providing a specific tab for it, so that you can go through all the to dos that you added. So that kind of if you do it in
This
that way,
captures
it is helpful, but don't do it in a way where you merge it and then you say you'll do it later, kind of.
so this captures all the to dos. If I mention
Yeah,
a video,
yeah.
oh,
So
okay.
then it becomes yeah. You just put on this in all the classes where to do. So there's only one here, but
Okay.
otherwise it will capture all of them in this, and then you can kind of go through each one of them.
Okay.
Yeah. So that helps. And yeah, avoid redundant comments. Yeah, this is again I covered just now. Not just now, just little while back. That simply restate what is obvious. So yeah, this one. Get patient alias, and then I said that patient alias. So you don't need that one. It is just stating the obvious what this particular line of code is doing. There's no need of this particular thing. And then yeah, be careful with legal and informative comments. So that's licensing information and all those things. So that, yeah, there's just those are the things that you let it be there. You don't change it
Yeah.
if there are any of those sorts. Yeah, but those are things that are so. The moment you read it, you will know that you should not be touching those things, because it will look legal or it will look formal, or licensing other. You will not touch those things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, comments for complex logic. This, as I said, that if there is complex logic, so I think the one that I was talking about, this Dropbox service, it had all these complex things that were going on. There are like a lot of exceptions that were throwing and so on. And so that's why in those kind of scenarios, you kind of put out a comment saying what you're doing, so that anybody comes in, they will know that what's happening out there and why it has uh, coming out. So yeah, so the whole idea is just to use it sparingly. And only so if you have added a comment, you basically question yourself whether it is required, whether it will make relevant, whether there will be any issues in future, and so on. So that will tell whether it is informative to the next developer who is going to go through that code. Yeah, and then last, it's avoid overcome commenting. Yeah, try to, yeah, if you're using sparingly, you will not fall into the trap. But if you are not using sparingly, like here, yeah, this is over commenting. It's a clear example of you should not kind of do this. Yeah, and then there's no point of adding all those comments, and you kind of have to clean those things up.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the Solar lint what I was going to talk about. So see, this particular class, it tells me all the issues that are there. So if you look at the first issue, rename report now, which hides the field. So I think it will be used two places.
So just like a plugin, Sonar Lint.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it's a it's a plugin.
Okay.
So it just tells you what are, see the this block of commented line should be removed. So
Okay.
it will tell you where the issue is, and then like this is like a null pointer exception can be thrown, and then the how this like we could follow that camel case. So you kind of we are not following that, so it will kind of tell all those issues. Uh, so that it's a pretty good tool to have on it's a pretty good plugin to have it in IntelliJ, and it just makes your code clean. Like you know what the issues are, you kind of fix it as you go. Because other thing is, like, even if I don't open this, if I just minimize this, all this, right? Still you can see there's some highlighting that's being done. And if I just mouse over it, it will tell me the issues. Sonalin show issue locations. It will show me all the issues again. So you can see some kind of an highlighting. So it will tell you, hey, for this comment, it is giving again, say, dangling jar document, remove dangling comment. So you can kind of just, and yeah, you just can do like that also. You can just click on it and it goes away for some of them. So yeah, it can auto fix it for you. But the thing is, it shows what all the issues. You can kind of go and fix all of them. So that's another advantage of that plugin. And this is like helps in keeping code clean. And like when we have those build pipelines that we have this sonar check that runs. So if you fix your issues here itself, that pipeline will automatically pass for you. So you don't need to then keep on fixing it. So instead of that, you just fix it when you're writing the code.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's one of the better plugins that is useful for most of the scenarios. Yeah, I think I've covered all this.
Yeah, roughly covered. Yeah. Sorry, I have a hard stop at 6:30.
Yeah, I think yeah.
A couple of questions. Yeah, if there's anything else to cover, and then.
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah, Kathleen, you have any comments from your side or?
Kathleen is good.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if you got a chance. Yeah, please go ahead, Kathleen.
Oh, I'm just listening.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if you had a chance to see that particular code, Dishit. If it's okay, then probably I'll change it a bit and then put it up on
Which
GitHub.
one? Which one on the one that you?
That I sent. It is basically a code which highlights those top takeaways that are there in the context of that book club.
Yeah. I think.
It's largely okay. Then I'll tweak it a bit and then.
Yeah, that's pretty clear.
Yeah.
That looks good. Yeah.
Okay.
Implement the toilet message. No, that used to indicate enhancement or changes needed. So yeah, for the to do, at least you can kind of mention that avoid leaving to do comments.
Okay.
So that you don't leave to do comment in the code.
Yeah.
So I've used for one of the scenarios where we were building for something for future. So in that scenario, so there was a method that had to return based on certain condition. It has to return either true or false. So I defaulted to true because at that point of time that whatever the logic that I had to implement was not captured in a requirement or anything like that. So in that particular scenario, I left a to do saying that this will be fixed, or this the logic will be added once we have the requirements of it. But for now, I'm just setting it as true, and so that was captured in all the documents that we had. So if any developer stumbles on that to do, they will know that this is known thing, and somebody else will come and add that in. But that was not that was like a business decision. It was not my decision. So in those specific scenarios, you kind of there's no other choice but to leave that to do in. But otherwise, you don't want to add any to dos.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, just a couple of things I had. I was thinking about, and actually, you would have gone through this book beforehand.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's curious to know what were the top 2-3 things that you had on top of your mind from this clean code that you learned. Also, and just to have just in terms of time and organizing, which chapters do you think are the real? Are much more important than others relatively, I wanted to have your perspective on that as well.
Uh, yeah, I think the chapter, there are a few chapters that were good. One is there's some concurrency. There's one chapter on concurrency, which is really good.
Okay.
Then he gives an example of how does he abstract all the methods out. Uh, I don't remember which chapter it is, but I think that was the other good thing. And
Maybe
whatever,
the methods out.
yeah. So, for example, like the call that we had, I think maybe the week before or before that, where we talked about the methods, the functions, where we had, the function should not have more than three arguments and so on.
Yeah.
So in that, there was one of the takeaway was that the method should have the same level of abstraction. So if you
Yeah. Yeah.
it should not go down and come up kind of thing. So within a particular method,
Yeah.
you keep all of them at same level of abstraction.
Yeah.
So I think he gave a very good example for that particular scenario. That how do you ensure that you keep methods at a same level of abstraction. That
Okay.
was a little bit tricky for me to understand at that point of time. So, but then yeah, I could get it like after two or three times of
Okay.
going through the
Fine.
code as well as reading it. So that's good part. And concurrency was good. And then yeah, there are other. Then he talks about all these code smells that you have,
Yeah.
and the code smells that you have. Uh, yeah, the sonar lint that is there, it actually uh, has all those code smells inside. It's already capturing it.
Okay. Okay.
So, and I showed you the sonar lint. That sonar lint
Yeah.
will tell you, will explain you why it is a code smell and what is non-compliant code and what is compliant code. It will give you the examples and everything.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, so whenever you write that code, you run that sonar, you just keep that plugin on, and then that plugin will tell you all those information, and that's actually it helps you learn
Okay.
because I've seen in the book he has written all those code smells.
Okay.
Like there should not be two lines between a method. The code should be dense and other
Yeah.
things. And then there are if statement. If there are too many if statements, then code complexity increases and so
Yeah.
on. So cyclomatic complexity is more should not be more than 15 and all. So those kind of things he talks about in the book, and he has kind of referenced that. But then you don't need to go through. You can kind of read through it to get a understanding of how the code should look like. But then if you use that Sonalint plugin, that kind of helps you whenever you see it will be some kind of an highlighted in IntelliJ. So you will just hover about it. It will tell you what the code smell is or what the issue is, and you can kind of fix it like on the fly.
Okay.
So so
It's
that
helpful to know.
yeah. So there are few of the I think I was just going through all the chapters recently, and I saw that all these things are there. And then I thought that's you can kind of take away. And then he talks about test. Test is very important. Um, the testing. So he talks about testing a third party library, but
Mhm.
yeah, I mean you hardly do that kind of a thing. But the important takeaway that I had from that chapter was writing tests, and I found that like initially when I started programming, I never used to
Mhm.
write tests. But then when I started writing tests, means when I started writing proper tests, like to ensure that the system does not fail, I found
Mhm.
few benefits. One of the benefit is that like the test, if let me open, well, let me share the screen again quickly.
Yeah.
Uh,
Again, one thing that struck me when I was skimming through the book earlier was when the mental model that gave me some insight was that earlier software used to be built like a skyscraper, but now it's more like a city. That it's more like systems being built rather than, and it kind of give me a sense. Okay, that especially with distributed systems and all coming in system design, it's
yeah,
we have to think of how software is getting built more and more like that.
yeah.
I mean, which has
So,
advantage and disadvantages, but that is the mental model to think of how software will become more and more.
Yeah, so I think the first session I talked about, I don't know whether you were there, I talked about the only thing that is constant about this code is that it is going to change.
Mhm, mhm.
So you need to the smaller units you make, it's easier to change.
Yeah,
The bigger things you make, it becomes harder to change.
yeah.
Like if you look at it from that perspective, well, I mean, I think that's one of the best way to look at it. So if you look at it from that perspective, it kind of tells you, yeah, it kind of guides you in for a lot of the decisions that you have.
The more
So
things are small, it will be easier to change and put them together again or reconnect
yes,
like that.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. Yeah. So this is a test class.
Mhm.
So what I've done is I collapsed all the methods. So if I collapse all the methods, so it says process file. So should return when no file available. So it says, which means it should not throw an exception. Now then should raise exception when file is not present in queue. Should set invalid file size when file size is less than 8 MB. Should set file not found if file is not present on disk, and give max. So what it is doing is it's telling me what are the rules for that particular class for the file that is being tested.
Yeah, yeah,
What are the? It's basically the documentation, right? The whole
yeah.
requirement is being captured in the test.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
because I've written those tests, I know that these are the rules that I need to abide by.
Nice,
And
nice.
if I make any changes, one of the tests will fail. Then I will kind of investigate why the test failed, and then I can take a decision whether because I know these are the rules. Now, if the change I'm making, like for example, the 8 MB, right? So instead of 8 MB,
Yeah,
it has changed to 16 MB. So obviously, if this fails, then I will know that okay, you know what, this test has to be updated. But
yeah.
if it is not related, something has failed due to which is not related to the requirement, obviously, you need to fix the code or the test. So this
These are
documentation is
all
what,
unit tests, right? These are all at
yeah, these are
the
unit tests. Yeah,
these are all unit tests. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And that it kind of it gives this documentation. Another aspect is like, because what you do is by covering all those scenarios, you're
Yeah.
ensuring that there's very little chances of bugs that can
True.
occur. The bugs can only occur if there is a missed requirement, yeah, or if there's a missed scenario, like there's a particular special scenario that you kind of did not think about it. Those kind of things is what will get missed, but it will not. You will not kind of. There will not be like very easy bugs out there.
Yeah.
So basically, your code quality will go very high on that scenario. So those are two reasons why like I find that writing tests is really helpful.
True. True.
So going through that, the one he talks about, and then if you want to write good tests, you kind of need to know this Mockito. In Java, at least, you need to know
Yeah, there's a
Mockito
Mockito.
library.
Mockito.
It's a really good library, and it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing is you should not use the power something. There's an extended one that I generally don't recommend using it. Because it uses advanced concepts from reflection, and there are some issues with it. So, but
Okay.
so you try to, and other thing is, if you are write a code that is small and testable, in that
Mm-hmm.
scenario, you don't need to use that power mock. It's called power mock, so you don't need to use the power mock. Mockito will do for you. So if you have to use power mock, which means there is something in the code that you've written which is not right, you can kind of refactor your code to make it simpler to test. So that's another way of thinking around it. I think
Got it.
that yeah. So I think that's about it. So I think you have a hard stop.
Yeah, I have a
uh,
thanks.
yeah,
This is
yeah,
good. Huh? Like every
yeah,
session, something nice and informative is
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Great.
Uh,
Then I'll see you folks
yeah,
next
next week.
Friday.
Next week. Yeah, next Friday. All
Okay.
right. See you.
Okay.
Bye.
Yeah,
Thank you.
great lecture. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.